Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. We have a fantastic show coming up tonight. Amelia Cotter is back with us. Coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is my co-hostess, Vanessa Hogel. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight. Amelia Cotter, author, storyteller, paranormal investigator with RIP Files, is back with us. She has a 10th anniversary edition of her book, This House, which just came out here on Haunted Road Media. What was that, about a month and a half ago, Amelia? Something like that?
Yeah.
A month ago?
Sometime in April, in the year of April.
In the year of April. With the way everything's been lately, everything's kind of meshed together. So.
We're now in the 6 years of May.
Right.
Yeah.
So how you doing, Amelia?
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing pretty well. It's nice to be back with y'all. So
yeah, it's been a little while. We were supposed to be having our Haunted Road Media Paracon coming up here in a few weeks, which is one of the reasons, of course, to help promote your book, but also coming up just before the Paracon, since you were going to be speaking at that. Now that's been delayed until September. So unfortunately, it's going to be a while until we see you again. And even then, we're not sure if that's going to happen, unfortunately. So.
I mean, it still gives me something to look forward to because I have a couple of things that are possibly being rescheduled between August and October. And I know that it could still get pushed back, but I'm hopeful that we can gather by then.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So tell us about This House, because when we last had you on, I think we talked snakes last time, and then the time before that, it was Maryland ghosts and some of your other writing. But this one it's a 10th anniversary edition of This House, the true story of a girl and a ghost. I was very happy to do a new edition for you. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to have all my books, all my paranormal supernatural themed books at home with Haunted Road Media, because I love what you do with everything. And so This House is 10 years old now, and it has quite just the book itself has quite a history at this point, but the story relates back to I'm hearing some feedback, or is that
there was a little feedback there for a moment.
It was okay. Sorry. But yeah, so the book is based on my experiences growing up in Maryland when I was a kiddo, exploring an abandoned house near where my dad worked. And not only how I was fascinated with the house and the ghost that was supposed to haunt the house that had been affectionately named Walter, but sort of like my nostalgic journey, becoming interested in ghosts and spirits, the supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to call it. And also just my fascination with the world and the mysteries of the world and everything. So it's a nice book. It's a quick read. It was originally supposed to be a young adult book. I wrote it, with not knowing that it was going to become a book that would be read widely by other, grown-up paranormal investigators, which has been the primary audience. And then, of course, I became an author, speaker, storyteller type of person. At the time that I wrote it, I was 22, and I had no idea that any of that was going to happen. I just thought I want to write a book about my experiences, and my friends and family will read it. So
right now, is it these experiences that set you on the path of your interest in the paranormal?
I think so. I had some sort of ingrained interest. I was always at the library checking out books about ghosts. I was always interested in ghosts and ghost stories and scary movies. And I watched scary movies when I was a young kid too. Ghosts, like the old classic ghost stories and stuff like that. This was sort of, I was interested in ghosts, and then I started to explore the house. And then from
Were you looking for ghosts when you went to go explore it?
Yes. So I had a little junior ghost hunting kit. Mm-hmm. There was a book out at the time. I was 11 years old. So there was a book out that was a junior ghost hunter's guide. And so I actually had a little backpack filled with my audio recorder. And at the time they said always bring baby powder with you so you can dust. I mean, this was
right. See if you can get some footprints in the baby powder. Yeah.
in the 25 minutes that I'm going to be there exploring the house, right? So so I had this interest in ghosts, and then my dad told me, wow, there's this great haunted house on the property, where I work. You should totally check it out. And they supervised me because it wasn't exactly 1,000% safe. And then my interest sort of grew and deepened from there. I remember being at school and giving little speeches. Like if we had to give a report, I would talk about like haunted houses and Walter's house, which is the subject of the book. So yeah, I've been doing this from the beginning.
That's awesome though. And the baby powder thing works.
Yeah,
I heard that Johnson & Johnson is going to stop making baby powder, so I don't know what we're going to do now.
Oh, well, there goes my career.
Yeah.
Regular flour.
Could use flour, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are others that make talcum powder, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Well, I totally lost my train of thought there for a second. I had a question before we got on to baby powder, and I lost it.
Yeah. My bad.
It happens. Yeah, it's all right.
Well, I while you're thinking of that, I'm going to ask one.
Sure, go ahead.
So, I mean, you've always been interested in this. You've always had some type of want to look after things like this. Have you been able to do what you wanted to do and see things to fruition, or are there still things that are on your not bucket list? I don't like that term, but
right.
What have you not been able to tap into or do yet that is still on your to-do list?
Well, that's a great question. So I see myself entirely as somebody who is observing and being, in awe and inspired by this phenomena and by people's stories and ghost stories. That's what I love. I love the mystery. I'm not one of those people who's out there to find the truth. Mm-hmm. Each discovery leads to more questions, and that part is the coolest thing for me. None of us know. Nobody's going to know what happens after we die until we get there. The existence of ghosts or non-existence of ghosts doesn't necessarily prove, anything about the nature of afterlife or God or anything like that. It would just mean that there would be ghosts. And those are questions that I do enjoy pondering. But for me, I enjoy mysteries. I enjoy history. I enjoy being feeling like I'm a part of history, and connecting with people and the past and other living people and non-living people, through just this fascination with also just like the underbelly of, I don't want to say society because that sounds like too, you know what I mean? But too abstract, but, like secrets and secret history and secret knowledge. Those things are all fascinating to me. Even conspiracy theories, like we can go way out there. But so for me, there's, as far as like not bucket list, but goals, there are places I want to visit. There are books I want to write and stories I want to tell. And, but otherwise I'm kind of doing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And of course, after this quarantine is lifted, I hope to get out and do more exploring. I've never wanted to go out and explore more than I do now. And, but yeah, just have fun with it. I dare say the F word, but
yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
No,
I don't want you to lose it again.
Right. I was going to ask, that you talked about, getting out and wanting to go explore. And by the way, we did put a link to Amelia's book, This House, down in the description. What would be the first place you would just run out to and go explore right now with the quarantine lifted?
I actually have been thinking a lot. The two places I've been thinking about that are in like super close proximity to us are Galena, Illinois, and Baraboo, Wisconsin. So I've been dying, like itching to go on like a road trip, stay in like a B&B and like do some cool, haunted activities. I've been longing to go back to New Orleans. So I would yes. to New Orleans and do some more in-depth exploring there. I would love to meet up with some people who have like access to some sites, because I did a couple of ghost and cemetery tours, which is phenomenal. But someplace where I could get in and stay the night in like a haunted hotel. That's kind of where I'm at right now. like really be immersed in it.
Who did you take your tour with?
When I did free tours by foot.
Okay.
That was for both that was a ghost tour and a cemetery tour, and they were excellent.
Okay.
And you pay the little administrative fee,
Mm-hmm.
and then you give the guide what you think they've earned. But I've been a tour guide. I've been a tour guide with Chicago Hauntings before, so definitely don't give them anything less than $30.
Exactly right.
I mean, it's still like it was an awesome. Both of them were awesome tours.
When you go down there again, and this might not be your thing, and if it's not, that's okay. But a friend of mine does a tour down there. It's a vampire tour. And so it's different than anything that you've been on so far. His name is Jonathan Weiss, Weiss.
Okay.
And it's I believe it's $35 or $40 for the tour. It is so worth it.
Cool.
For the areas that you go to. And if anybody would know how to get you in or put you in connection with the right people to be able to get into some locations, it's Jonathan.
Nice. That sounds cool. Thanks for the tip.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful, historically accurate and very street theater, but not campy.
Oh tour. Yeah. Nice. That sounds cool.
Yeah, so you would enjoy it. But one last thing, and then I'm going to have Mike jump back in here. But I wanted to touch on something that you said that I love how you said it, and I've never heard anybody else do this, self included. Is that it's like a secret, and that is so true. And I just wanted to touch on that. That makes so much sense to me. It actually hit me here. Because that is really what this is like when you're not trying to prove, when you're not trying to force feed your opinions down somebody's throat. It's almost like a little, like you're in on something that nobody else knows about. And I think that's the beauty of this field. If you take it at that value alone, you can actually have fun with it and really enjoy yourself and learn more because you're happy.
I think it's okay for it to be a spiritual experience or, a fun, not, a fun experience, something that is personal, that doesn't have to be explained or understood by others, and magical.
Yes. Yes. Best I've ever heard it put. So I had to comment on that. I had to. So, all right, there you go. I'm good, Mike.
You're good? All right. Well, I just want to comment here. So Tammy Heitzman down in the chat seems excited that you have an interest in Baraboo. So, because she's also from Wisconsin.
Oh, awesome. I love Baraboo. Oh.
Yeah. And
I've been through there, but I didn't stop.
It is
a
very cool place.
Yeah, you have some interesting things coming up. I guess we're probably not allowed to talk about that one just yet.
We can. I think so. If you're,
I'm fine with that. I just didn't know from a project standpoint.
Go down that road. No, that's fine because I'm committed to it now at this point. But I'm working with the folks at the Old Baraboo Inn to write a book of ghost stories specifically centered around all the activity that happens there at the inn. And so I've been doing some research on Baraboo and the inn's history and Baraboo's history and really getting deep down in it. And Shelley Wells and BC Farr, who are the owners, brother, sister owners and operators of like their ghost tours and of course the bar itself, they have sent me a bunch of material. We were all on the Travel Channel together in December on Hometown Horror. They did a whole episode about Baraboo. So definitely, I think you can watch that on Amazon Prime. And it's like campy and fun and crazy, all of the circus stuff and hauntings. And anyway, it's a good show. But I'm excited about that. So that will hopefully be published by Haunted Road Media as well.
Well, yeah, I've already taken a little bit of a look at it, the preliminary stuff, and yes, very interested.
We got off to a really, really slow start, but this year it looks like I have been given the gift of time to really start working on it. So I'm not going to show you anything until I haven't showed Shelley either. I want to make sure I have everything fleshed out nicely before I push it along and make sure everybody's happy with it before it actually turns into something. Because it sort of started out as like, what if I wrote the book? And then I was like, but what if you write the book instead? And I was like, I'll do it. You know,
Right.
I was like, I'm happy to help. And they're really cool. They're really great people. So
Yeah, they seem really nice.
They are, and the inn is so cool, and just the town of Baraboo is really lovely.
Mm-hmm. And it has a really cool name, I have to admit. Just
doesn't it?
It's a little bit cool.
It is.
I did some research into the name Baraboo, because if you can look up any site, like you can look up the Sauk County Historical Society or the Baraboo Town website or Wikipedia or anything, the Baraboo Historical Society, and they all tell a different origin story of where the name came from. But there's this cool article that you can find. I can, send it to anybody who's interested, but it's from the Baraboo Library of all these people debating when the name started. And there's literally like 12 to 20 different original sources of whether it was like of somebody's French surname that was mispronounced and misspelled. And the first time it was ever written as Baraboo was in like 1844. But then after that, they were still calling it like 5 different things. And but anyway, yes, it has the coolest name for a town. So.
It does. I can see where they would come up with that if it was somebody coming from the South coming up that actually has a French Creole sound to it.
It's got like, it could be from the name Baraboo or Ribot or Barbo. I mean, there's like a bunch. And then a Baraboo is also a term for for a certain type of mountain. Like a monadnock, which is another word that I went down the rabbit hole with. So, anyway, it's fascinating because you're thinking like, oh, of course it's got to be named after like Jean Baraboo, right? But then you're like, oh, there's like 50 other dudes with like similar names that, these, and I was hoping that it was of Native American origin, because that's an area that's like rich in history and mound history, and it sort of has that mouthfeel to it. And there's other places nearby that are named after that, but it's not. It's like a bastardization, I think, probably of some of the French traders who came in and took over the area. So, but yeah, so I'm a nerd when it comes to that stuff. I've been geeking out on that and stuff.
No, that's awesome, and that's
with the book.
No, but it's all interesting background information. So
yeah,
I totally get it, especially being a writer and researcher myself. So yeah, absolutely. We do have some questions from the chat coming in. So Mr. CO2, this is back when we were talking about your book, This House. Since this has to do with abandoned buildings, what type of spirits like hanging out in abandoned buildings?
Boy, what a good question. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you wonder if the spirits are aware that the buildings are abandoned, if that's better for them, if they want to be alone and have the comfort and safety of just their own company, I suppose, or if they would rather dwell in a home that still is loved or taken care of. It's funny, like imagining like ghosts haunting a cemetery, right? Like, why would you haunt such a place? Why would you haunt an abandoned building? But I would imagine that if you felt connected enough to the place, or if you had something terrible or something wonderful happen there, that you wouldn't want to leave. And if spirits are stuck in the realm in which they were living, then they might not know that it was abandoned. But I would imagine the answer is all kinds of spirits. And I would also think lonely spirits, because we do tend to encounter sadder spirits in abandoned places, I think, like as a general rule.
I've often wondered if, because we don't exactly know how spirits get where they get sometimes. And I've often wondered if they don't come through these little portals that only open and close at certain times, and that if you're at a place that's abandoned and it does have spirit activity that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to anything that happened at that location, it's like a totally random ghost, it's like, okay, yeah, did they get off the wrong bus stop and there isn't a bus coming? I mean, I wonder things like that. If, they stepped out of the portal and it doesn't open back up for 50 years, who knows? And And so that's why some places that might not necessarily have a reason for activity actually do.
And I've heard so many people theorize also, to build on that, that like people investigating a lot, and since ghost hunting is becoming more mainstream, that people are kind of bringing things with them, or opening those doors and portals and whatnot, and kicking up dust, like, so that places are starting to be like more haunted than they would be otherwise, or sometimes they're haunted by something strange, like a strange non-human spirit that seems to be like an energy mass. So yeah,
I could totally see that, because I've been at locations where there have been other people, and I'm like, do you know what you got on you? Okay, can you not feel that? Because you're leaving little tidbits of it all over the place, and that makes perfect sense to me. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
We have another question from the chat to kind of piggyback on this. And I know as paranormal investigators, this is one that we try to get answered and we don't usually get an answer for, but it's always one of those things on our mind. From Judy Wilson: if a spirit lived in a house, do they see the house as it was when they were living in it, or do they see it as we see it?
That's another thing that's a great question too. And that's something that I wonder, and I think that there's been like evidence gathered for both sides. I think it's possible that sometimes they see their environment as it was, or even like a mixture of the environment. Like they think that they're still living in their house the way I'm in my apartment now, but they see other people coming and going and wonder who they are. I know that when I explored Walter's house, I had the sense that this spirit that I felt I had communicated with was aware that the house was abandoned and in disrepair. I had caught an EVP on my little recorder at the time, where I was, this was shortly before the house was torn down, and I didn't know it was going to be torn down, but there was a row of jars sitting on top of like an old shelf. And I had thought about taking one of the jars. And normally, I mean, I was 11, of course, now I wouldn't take anything, but I did. I grabbed it, and I even had a second thought. I was like, I don't know if I should take this. And the voice on the recorder said, take it now. And so I have the sense that that jar was not there when that person when he was alive, but that he knew what the house looked like in that state. And I have the jar.
Oh, you do?
Wow.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. This is my one. This is my haunted object that I should start my own haunted.
Yeah, there you go. And what's the lid say? Because it looks pretty old.
It says Pitt. It's a mason jar from Baltimore, Maryland. C.M. Pitt and Sons Company. So this, I think, is from around, this is definitely, obviously it's the 20th century, but they had all sorts of stuff in the house from nothing later than the 1950s. But yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Very cool.
I can't believe you still have it. Wow.
My parents had it forever. And then I took it before I moved to Chicago, and I've kept it all this time.
Wow. That is crazy. And cool, though.
No, very, very. So Mr. CO2 also asked, do abandoned buildings, or are abandoned buildings known to have portals?
Gosh, I mean, I guess a portal could be anywhere, but I think based on like what Vanessa was saying before, that it is possible for them to be, appropriate places. I think also some spirits do, I feel, like to hide, or like to find a place where they can like nest or settle in. You know what I mean? So that like abandoned places would be a good place for a spirit that does want to do that, if it's coming through a portal, I guess. But that's assuming so many things about like how conscious spirits are and how sentient they are and everything. But I don't know.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, especially when you're talking about something that might not be as kind as others might be, that they would seek out a place where they could be away from other people, because they're afraid of what else lies out there. So that would give them a sense of control,
right?
In a world where they have no control.
And there are stories too, spirits that come and control other spirits. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's quite possible.
Yeah, I've actually been in that situation where I've seen that happen.
Oh wow.
And, yes, and it's not anything I would wish on anyone else. So you're absolutely right.
So another question here from Tim Schoen, directly related to the book. Does the new edition here, the 10th anniversary edition, does it have any new content?
Excellent question, Tim. No. So it's got about 2 additional paragraphs of me writing a heartfelt introduction, but I didn't add any material to it. It's a time capsule, and I'm as nostalgic about having this book that I wrote when I was, a younger person. Of course, I would do things differently now. I would have written it a little bit differently, probably. But anyway, no, it doesn't have new material, but it still has all of the journal entries that I wrote when I was a kiddo about the place. So you can kind of compare the narrative to the journal entries. And then it has my introduction. It has all of the same chapters, which did develop over the years. So in the 2nd or 3rd edition, I did add additional material. So that's something to note.
And it has a spiffy new cover.
It's got a great new cover. Yes, and it has such a great feel to it. Also, it's like it's got that really nice quality.
The matte finish, yeah.
Yes, I like.
Nick Moulet down in the chat says he still has the original edition. So
wow,
that's pretty cool. And
yeah, I appreciate that people have. It's like a little pocket-sized.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
So Tom McNicholas points out back in October when I was up there at the Ghost Con in Chicago, that we had made this trip out to Bachelor's Grove, and you had told me to look out for the different jars and things like that, because you're talking about the jar that you found there.
Yeah.
So, can you elaborate a little bit more about Bachelor's Grove, the jars? Maybe there's something about jars, perhaps?
Sure. I remember the episode you guys posted too about that. Got some shade. I think it was really cool that you guys went out there and did some exploring of the area. Bachelor's Grove is so fascinating, and you could spend a lifetime, I think, just in investigating or studying just that one location. And the times that I've been out there when the weather's been reasonable enough, I've had people lead me around because I couldn't find it if you put a gun to my head, but to find these old house foundations. And every time you go out there, you can find these little artifacts and old pieces of glass and jars and everything from these old foundations that are set back into the woods. You've got to kind of cross a stream. And there's just a lot of fascinating stuff back there. You can see some of these smaller foundations and wells. And I had somebody tell me that those are not really old foundations either. Those were houses that were there in the 20th century, well into the 20th century, and then they were gone. I don't know. I don't know the veracity of that, but he was not very old, and he said he remembered when those houses were actually still there. So, yeah.
Real quick, I'm going to hop in here real quick because y'all are talking about jars. Just for everybody out there, if you're going to any of these places and you're looking for jars, if it has something in it, leave it. Okay? If it looks like it's got stuff in it that you don't recognize, leave it, because it can be spell jars.
Yeah, if Sharon Lane has a comment down in the chat, and she says bottles in a tree are for protection here in the South.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My general advice is definitely like not to take stuff. Obviously, people do, and if it's something that's really, really cool, then I understand. But you do have to be careful at Bachelor's Grove because it is a high activity location where for living human people that go there a lot, and people who have obsessive feelings of ownership, which I think you guys experienced after you uploaded that episode.
Right.
Every expert, comes out of the woodwork and everything because people feel a strong emotional attachment to that place. And so I could see it being possible that people leave people do leave strange things out there. So yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah, take a picture of it and send the picture to me, and I'll tell you what's in it. But leave it. You know, that's not somebody's burden you want to pick up. Okay.
We've been watching Hoarders recently, so I thought you were going to go down a whole different road when you were like, if you find a jar.
Oh no.
Like, yeah.
Well, definitely. That too. But just speaking for my people, okay? I mean, if I was to die tomorrow, my poor son's going to have some explaining to do over the shit in my freezer. So
you don't have like eyeballs or anything in there, do you?
No, but
bats wings.
They did have to come and fix my fridge a couple of years ago, and Grayson had to call me at work, and he goes, "Mom," and you could tell he got a kick out of it. He said, They're having me take everything out of the freezer. What do you want me to do with the people you got frozen in there? Yeah, true story. Now, not
That's
actual
awesome.
body parts, but I'm just saying. So, yeah, leave full jars. Don't touch them. So, okay, go ahead. I just had to put that warning out there because that's my people stuff. So
now it was a really interesting excursion because we did go out there. We found one foundation and actually a cistern back behind it, off of that, and that road still goes through there, which is really interesting. Yeah. And yeah. I don't know how long ago it was all abandoned. I mean, way back in the 20th century, like you were saying, but.
It was the road was still in operation at least through the 50s because that's when it was like a lover's lane. Mm-hmm. I think through the 70s, and then the last burial took place at Bachelor's Grove around like 1988. So it's Ursula Bielski's book, Haunted Bachelor's Grove, I think covers like a lot of the territory, and also I think maps out a lot of the areas of where those old houses were and everything, and how the area would look if it wasn't this weird overgrown place now. So, but it is special.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was the first time I'd ever been, and the guys Tom and Nick and a couple others that were with us. I mean, we really enjoyed it out there. It was the first time I'd ever been, and would love to explore some more because you always hear about the cemetery. And I don't think people realize that there's a whole other area over there to explore as well.
Everything about it is charged with some kind of special energy just from the minute you get out of the car when you park, in the parking lot. So, yeah.
So Leslie Fear in the chat was wondering what your scariest experience has been. I mean, you've done a lot, so.
Oh, I get asked this a lot.
Yeah, I know.
And I love it. I should have a canned response, and I don't because it changed. Like, I tell a different story every time. It's like whatever's at top of mind is like, that was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. But if you listen to like any other interview, I'll probably tell a different story. I've had a lot of weird things that frighten me. I was thinking the other day, I was contacted by somebody asking for stories about, Halloween stories. And I was like, oh, this crazy thing happened to me when I was, I'm sorry, I'm tired. I was going to say detective. When I was a tour guide for Chicago Hauntings Ghost Tours, I was warned by the other tour guides that when you would get around the Jane Addams Hull House here in Chicago, that strange things would happen out there on the tours. And I had one of my bus drivers even told me that she had been out there one night in like 2009 or something, and that one of the windows had exploded from the inside out, and that people would be followed home by certain spirits in the courtyard in front of the house. And now the Jane Addams Hull House is an operating museum on like the UIC campus, so it's not very spooky during the day, but at night it would be weird when I would take tours there. And of course it's like the site of the infamous devil baby story. And so everybody was like, don't go in the courtyard. You don't want to bring anything home. You might bring something home. And I thought that the other tour guides were just hazing me. I thought they were kind of giving me a hard time because I was new about like, you don't want to bring a ghost home or anything like that. And I remember there was this Halloween. It was exhausting. There were tours in the morning. There were bus tours for kids in the morning. And then there were party tours all night with people who were like drunk and sleeping and hardcore ghost hunters and everything in between. And I was, I got home very late, well, or early, depending on how you look at it. I got home around like 1, and I was alone in the apartment. So my dog and my roommate's dog slept in my room with me because she was away. So we would kind of look out for each other. And I got up in the middle of the night. I woke up, I had a weird dream. After doing all that talking about haunted history and tragedy and death for like hours and hours and hours, I would just have strange dreams anyway, and just have like a very heavy feelings. And I got up and I woke up and I heard shuffling in the hallway, shuffling like if somebody was wearing like slippers. And I thought actually that it was my roommate's dog for a second, Hannah, because she was big. She was like a big like pit bull mix. And so she might make that sound. But then I realized like, okay, she's sleeping on the floor right next to me and the door is closed. And I was like, oh man. So I waited and the sound stopped. And I got up and I was like, I need to pee. This sucks.
Of course, right?
The worst timing, right?
The worst timing. The bathroom door was directly across from my bedroom door. I had that side of the apartment and she had the other side with like the living room and her office. So I was on the side with the bathroom and the kitchen. So the bathroom was directly across from me. And then to the right would be the kitchen. So I was like, okay, I'm a big girl, right? I'm just going to go. So I open the door and I go across the hallway. It's a two strides to be in the bathroom. And I glanced into the kitchen as I went and I saw a woman like crouched on the floor in like a crab pose looking up at me. Ooh. And I, it was like, I was like, oh, what am I looking at? And I dove into the bathroom and I slammed the door and like I splashed water on my face. I was like, I'm just really tired and I've had a very long day. She was in like a nightgown or a dress, and she looked similar to me, to one of the spirits that people described seeing on the tour. Sometimes guests would see this woman, and sometimes the other tour guides talked about seeing this woman. And Adam Seltzer, who was one of the tour guides and also an author and historian here in Chicago, he had caught a picture, or one of his tour guests had caught a picture of what looked like this woman. Anyway, I'm like, great, she's in my kitchen right now. So I gathered myself. It was so bizarre, just this image of her crouching there, that I was like, okay, I'm going to do what they do in the horror movies and I'm going to go in the kitchen. So I was like, I came out and I flipped the light on and I was hoping to the goddess that when I would look down on the floor, there would be like a coat or a box or something that I could have accidentally seen as the shape out of the corner of my eye. No, there was nothing. The floor was completely clear. This image was burned into my mind. I can see it now just thinking about it. And I got that feeling that I've had before and that I know a lot of people describe when they see something where you get that static electricity feeling all over your. Yeah. And then I was like, okay. The way that this person was looking at me seemed to be like that sort of menacing, like I'm here to freak you out kind of thing. So I was like, I am not going to mess around. I'm going to go back in my room. I'm going to close the door. And I had the dogs in there with me. The dogs didn't really react, or at least I don't know if they reacted because I was darting this way and they were still in my room. I left the light on for a long time and then was just like, okay, I need to sleep and drink some water. And I was exhausted from all of the tour. So eventually I fell asleep too. But the next morning I thought maybe I'll wake up and think this was, just a dream or something. And the next morning I was like, oh, damn.
That happened.
That very clearly happened. So that certainly would top the list, I think.
That's interesting.
When people described her before, do they describe her in the crab position?
No.
Okay.
There had been weird. I think there had been other guides though that had described weird stuff happening. Like they had woken up and somebody was standing on their chest in their bed, or like straddling across, not like a old Hag Experience, but like they literally opened their eyes and somebody was straddling them. Just very bizarre things.
Well, it kind of is like an old Hag Experience, actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, but not in the sense that they just felt like they were having sleep paralysis. They actually like saw a person, I think it was a man. I think it was a headless man in that crazy ass.
Interesting. Okay.
The reason I'm asking, at this point, had you already been to New Orleans at all?
No, this was in 2013, I think.
Okay, yeah. What you're describing is in New Orleans. Yes, and she is at the Laurie house. And yes, and Delfino Laurie actually abused, tortured, killed her slaves. And one of the women, her and her husband and possibly her daughters, broke her extremities and shoved her in a wooden box. And so she healed that way. And when she was finally rescued amidst the rest of the slaves, when the Lauries skipped town because of the fire, they had to break the box, and she came out of the box walking like a crab.
Oh, gosh.
So I think you need to try to go to the Laurie house.
Well, I stood in front of it and took a few photos.
Yeah. She's in the attic.
Interesting. It also reminds me of, if people are from Illinois and they're familiar with like the Bartonville Asylum, there was a patient there named Rhoda Derry, I think, who had been kept in a Utica crib for many years, and so she wasn't able to stand, and she would walk kind of like on all fours to get around, but when she was transferred to the asylum and was able to, I think, live peacefully in the last few years of her life. But it reminded me of that too. But it really, yeah, it was bizarre. It was like, and it was very quick, but it was enough that I can see it very clearly in my mind now too. So, and I definitely had the feeling like, I'm just here to scare you. I'm here to let you know. Like the takeaway that I got from it was like, you know, we're not here for your entertainment kind of thing. Cause like, I think with the tours, it's interesting because it's just a really loud sound.
It was, I don't know what it was.
Something's reacting. Dun, dun, dun.
We never hear loud sounds here. Our neighbors are very quiet, but no, my takeaway was like, I think some of the spirits who are on the ghost tours appreciated people visiting them and remembering them and being acknowledged. I think sometimes it was also exhausting for them, and it can feel exploitative, especially on Halloween when there's literally like 15 buses pulling up one after the other, and there's like a Segway tour with a guy dressed like a zombie and all this kind of stuff, and it's crazy. And so I felt like that was just sort of nothing evil or anything, obviously, or, you know, there to hurt me, but just to kind of be like, you know.
Well, the disrespect of a lot of people during that time too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's ridiculous.
We always did a good job of straddling the, you know, this, we realize that you're doing this for entertainment value, but we're taking it seriously because like a lot of people died here, and we're not here just to put on a show kind of thing. So I think, anyway, wow. So now I told you that story.
Well, but
that's out in the open.
But from that story, Murtaza Arif actually had a question that he had posted earlier, but since that story also has to do with sleep, this actually ties into it. He asked, do you think trance or hypnotic states such as sleep also help you draw out elements from the paranormal in your writing?
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah, it's a good question.
It really is.
Yeah. I would say yes. So I would say I've been deeply inspired by dreams. I would say I've also had experiences within my dreams. I tend to have like vivid but weird dreams, and I have chronic, or used to have chronic nightmares. So when I have a dream that shifts and diverts away from stuff like that, I make note of it. But I feel like I've encountered relatives and things like that in dreams. I do practice sometimes. I do like the shamanic journeying, like meditation with drumming and everything. Sure. And I've felt like I've made connections through that. So that certainly has inspired me. I don't know to what degree it's inspired my writing, probably in the way that you mean it in the question, but for sure. And I know that like sleep and sleep states and being tired are sometimes used as like a cop out for like, well, I was really exhausted, or I was just waking up, so I must have still been dreaming. But I think that is a time when we can really deeply connect with those things. It's when you're very vulnerable, right? Like children are more vulnerable to paranormal. So if we allow ourselves to be in these vulnerable states, I don't think it's just because we're tired. I think that's when things really can happen.
Well, yeah, a lot of people talk about, those different states when like trying to astral project and do different things like that, or even like, tap into something like the Akashic records or the collective unconscious or things like that. So, and, people do get inspired with their writing through that. So it's a great question from him. So I like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have a lot of other questions coming in of different topics. So some of them are Chicago related. So
rapid fire answers.
Yeah. Tammy Heisman, has Amelia heard of alleged activity at John Wayne Gacy's old residence? Now his house is gone, but they've built a new house on top of it. And
what?
Yeah. So I went there last fall. I drove by the house finally. That was on my to-do list of sorts. Living in Chicago was to see the house. It's a really sobering sort of experience. It's not like, whoa, this is so cool. It's very strange and disturbing. The street is very strange. The whole area is very strange. When you think about Gacy and you're like, how did this happen at this house? And then you kind of see the way the neighborhood is laid out. You're sort of like, oh, this is interesting. You can kind of see it is a little isolated, even though it doesn't look that way in pictures. Anyway, but yes, it, like you said, there's a brand new house there, and I think it has a different number, and it sort of has a different foundation. I've never heard any ghost stories in conjunction with it, though. I think either it's still too soon for some people. The people who have lived there for a very long time, the house is for sale now. I'm sure they have stories. The only thing I know is like nothing would grow on the grass even after they turn the soil and everything, allegedly, because it was the grounds had been ruined and everything, and people saw that as supernatural. He used a lot of quicklime in the basement and everything, but they moved all that earth out to rebuild, and allegedly nothing would grow there. And that's the only story that I've ever heard.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Because it was gruesome. Between the crawl space, some of them were like under the patio, and then the
33 of them.
floorboards, and it was gruesome. So and they took care of that house like fairly quickly, like within a couple months after his arrest. So I don't know. So Vanessa, what do you have? I'm looking through this list of questions. There's quite a few coming in here.
I was actually trying not to commandeer, because I can get really bad about that. But actually, let's touch on that real quick. A lot of people, and I don't think you are one of them, but a lot of people have a fascination with the serial killers and wanting to go to a place like that. But I feel like you're more like me, and I don't care about him. I want to go to places like that to see if I can help those souls that are left behind.
Yeah, it's really just, I just wanted to go out of a sense of morbid curiosity, to be honest. It was something I'd always wanted to do. And I had a few friends that sometimes we go on a little road trip around Chicago kind of thing, because I don't have a car. So that's kind of a treat for me. And we hit up like Resurrection Cemetery and all these places all in one day. And so that was just one of the stops along there. We spent literally 5 minutes. I took a picture, and then I felt dirty inside. So, and I am fascinated by serial killers, but, in this modern age now, where we're all a little bit more woke than we used to be, sometimes I think what we need to be wondering is, how do these white guys get away with this for so long? That's the bigger question. Because if you read the story of John Wayne Gacy, you're like, my God, they kept letting him go.
Yeah.
So I can't look away, but I also, and I'm very interested in true crime and everything, but my feelings about why I'm fascinated with that have changed and evolved over time.
Well, I mean, that's actually to answer your particular question on how they get away with it. It is really very simple. Even in today's day and age, when we have all of the child sex rings going around. Everybody is thinking all these kids are being put in a ship and shipped off to another country because heaven forbid it couldn't possibly be us doing it, right? And that's what they're thinking, when in fact it's priests, attorneys, judges, doctors, school teachers, and the majority of them are white male, between the ages of 25 and 50. And they're people that are your next door neighbors. Same with serial killers. 95% of the serial killers, if I'm off on that percentage, I apologize, but 95% of serial killers are between the ages of 25 and 40 and white males. And we just, for whatever reason in this country especially, cannot get it in our heads that we can be the bad guy. We can be the one that causes so much terror and fear and angst amongst an entire country, and we just don't see it. And I don't know why, but that's, I don't think, I don't see it changing, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, not in the era of like mass shootings and everything either. We keep coming up. We always have an excuse for everybody. Everybody gets an excuse. Serial killers get entire books written about them. They get
they can sell their art from prison.
Yeah, but
and marriage proposals and shit. I mean, for real.
Yeah,
women.
People have a fascination with that topic, so yeah, it definitely happens.
True. There's an episode of Dark Tourist about that, which I think is on
That's
Netflix.
An interesting show. Yeah.
No, thank you. No.
All right. Well, back to your book, This House. Mr. CO2 is kind of bringing us back around to that. So he's wondering, are the spirits creepier, stranger, or less familiar in abandoned buildings centuries old?
Oh my, ask again? Sorry.
Yeah, are the spirits creepier, stranger, or less familiar in abandoned buildings that are centuries old?
Whew. Wow. Boy, these questions are so cool.
Yeah, they have some good ones tonight.
I don't know. I would imagine that there would be a level of strangeness. That's another thing. Like, we barge into all these places and we just start talking the way that we talk, and not considering that people, might speak a different version of English or, something like that, and have different customs and greetings and whatnot. So I imagine if they are aware of us and can interact with us in that way, that it would be strange and foreign. I've seen people walk into houses and with their little wacky devices, and they're like, ping once for yes and twice for no. And I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. How does somebody who has never had electricity or batteries know what pinging is?
Right.
Or I sat down once with somebody in like a 18th century house, and they sat down and they said, yo, come chill with us. And I was like,
nice.
I was like, I do want them to come chill with us, but I don't think I know what you're talking about. But also if that might elicit a response too. The person might say like, what are they talking about? Anyway, that's sort of a side tangent to the question, but I guess I don't know, but I would assume so.
I've been in places that date back to the 1500s, and I call it paranormal Chinese food. It's different geographically. Question on your book. I'm looking at the picture. Mike, can you put that cover up
sure.
there? Above the second pillar, that window that's next to the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a very active room? Because there's a little dude peeking out through there.
Oh yeah. I can't remember. I know that was the room. So that the window that's in the middle, I can't remember. I think those windows were both attached to the same room, and that room also led to where the staircase was to the attic, and the attic was like the heart of the house, and that's where I saw Walter. So I don't know, but that's a connection to that spot.
Yeah. Walter wasn't the only one in there, right?
I don't think so.
No.
All of the ghosts were sort of just affectionately all called Walter. And the one that I thought I had encountered was like a young man who's maybe like a little bit older than me, I think. And that's definitely who I saw. So I believe that I was encountering primarily one spirit, but many different spirits were seen around both the house and the restaurant. There was a woman, a man, couple different men. So
the one that's real quick, Mike, the one that's
ahead.
peeking out is a 9-year-old boy with brown hair, green eyes, and he has on a shirt that is like a plaid short sleeve shirt, and he doesn't have on shoes. His pants, they were what you'd call high waters. They were very, very, very short above his ankles. He's really, really, really thin, almost emaciated thin. So I had to tell you that. So, because I haven't read the book yet, so I need to read the book. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you.
What I want to ask you, Amelia, I know the house is gone now, and you visited there when you were quite young, but if it was still there and you could go back now with all the experience that you've had investigating and being involved with the paranormal, how would you approach going back into that house today? Wow.
So in March, we actually drove back to the site, which is just a grassy lawn right now. And it was I can tell you, I stood there like an idiot, like with my iPhone, just like snapping photos. And I was like, hi, Walter. Like, just very like, all this time spent and all this time thinking about it. And then I'm there in the spot where it was. And I didn't know what to say or do. And it was kind of awkward. And we stayed for like 10 minutes. I walked around. I if the house was there, oh my gosh, I would just go right on in the front door and hope that there was still a floor there. But I think I would grab Jonathan and take him in there and like just go through every inch of the house again and relive all of it, and probably look around more, because now I have more of a sense of history in place. So I think I would pay more attention to the stuff that was on the floor or the stuff that was in the kitchen. There was like an old can of like carnation milk, like still sitting on the kitchen table.
Oh, wow.
Which somebody also could have put there in the meantime or something like that. But it was just, everything was like somebody left in like 1954 and everything was just there. It was still all there. And I thought that was cool when I was a kid, but now I think I would just want to take photos of everything, and make sure that it was documented, and really spend some more time feeling it out, like spiritually. I also wonder sometimes, it was interesting. I was a kid. I went into the house. I was like, I really wish I could see a ghost. That puts me in a very vulnerable place. Right. And now I think I would be much more cautious about that aspect of it. But it turned out pretty well, I think. Thank goodness.
That's good. Speaking of being cautious, Betty Lange down in the chat does ask if you use protection when you go into places like this.
Sure. Yes. So I have I don't always like take things with me. I used to have little like specific, necklaces or charms or talismans or something that I would carry around with me. Now I do more of like a mental kind of prayer and then post prayer, and very clear about. I'm also I'm weirdly vocal about stuff like not following me home, like do not follow me to the car, kind of like crazy stuff.
Sometimes you have to do that.
Whatever works. It's like, as long as you feel it, it will work. So it can be any religion, it can be any, ridiculous, like your favorite sock, and so, I'm like that vocal person who's like, thank you so much. And please don't come home with me.
You are not welcome, Yeah. Yep. You're right, though.
Yeah. Get back, demon. So
Awesome. Well,
great.
Yeah. We're about at our hour mark. We got about, I don't know, another minute and a half or whatever till we hit that. But Amelia, where can people find you? Where can they find you can get the link to the book down in the description, and Quarantine Ghosts have been putting it in there, but also all your other work as well.
Yeah. So my website is ameliacotter.com. It has all the stuff. And Amazon has all my books available, as well as I think like barnesandnoble.com, and you can order them through your local bookseller. And I think Books A Million in some places, and Barnes and Noble in Maryland might still have some old copies of Maryland Ghosts as well. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and please connect with me. I love to connect with people. So, yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely fantastic to have you back, Amelia. So
thanks. This is always a good time with you guys. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm sorry we won't be having the Paracon here in June. Hopefully September works out. I'll probably have more information here the next few days or weeks or whatever. But
That's great. That's fine.
yeah, and
I think we're all in a it is what it is kind of phase right now.
We are. And you're up there in Chicago, which has been hit hard. So we do hope you stay safe up there.
Thanks. Yeah, we're taking it pretty seriously up here, and I'm trying to be as understanding as we can of how slow the process will be, and we'll just have a lot to look forward to when the world reopens.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Amelia, thank you very much once again, and you have a good evening. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you both.
Bye-bye, hun.
Bye.
All right, there we go. Amelia Cotter, everybody. So we love her. She's awesome.
Oh, she is great. That woman has the most beautiful skin ever.
You've mentioned that before. Yeah.
I mean, I would trade her in a friggin' heartbeat. I'm so jealous. I am.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And it's funny because anytime we have Amelia on, I always have to laugh because she was going to college in Frederick, Maryland when I actually lived there. And the shopping center that I would always like buy groceries at was like always it was right across from the college, that shopping center. So at some point in time, we probably crossed paths over there, and just, it was years later that of course we met. So it's a small world.
Oh yeah. I'm
So
sorry.
a couple of announcements here before we get to the shout-outs. First of all, there's no Beyond the Shadows tonight. So this is the only show for the evening, because, well, there's no show next week either. Just to let you know, because
we don't have our show next week, right?
No shows next week. That's because I'm moving, and the pods are arriving tomorrow, and I'm really not going to have all of my stuff for like a week and a half. So, so there's no Beyond the Shadows tonight. No show next week. We will be back June 9th. So.
Okay.
We'll have Meg Fisher on, talk about her new book. So we're kind of doing the author thing now for a little bit. So we did, we were doing UFOs there for a while. Now we're doing authors. So we kind of go in like little phases.
Yeah. True story.
Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and get to the shout outs. I want to thank Quarantine Ghost for moderating the chat, doing such a fantastic job down there. Again, you can find the link to Amelia's book in the description below. So for those listening later to the podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, please go to Amelia's website, ameliacotter.com. So, all right, let's go ahead and get to those shout-outs. I want to thank our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons, Tom McNicholas, B3 Airspace, Pamela Queen, Joe Chandler, Andrew Cox, Dustin Samario, and David Yeisley. Thank you all very, very much. Oh, and I see the question down there, where am I moving to? Headed back to Ohio. So, all right. Yeah, Fairy Queen, Diane Hilbert, watch out, Ohio, Mike is coming. Yep. I'm coming back. And Amelia and Quarantine Goes to put the link to Amelia's website down there in the chat. So thank you for that. All right. Let's go to the participants tab. Who do we have down there? We've got B3 Airspace, Candy Orton. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. There's Chipper Terry and Christopher Stan. Thank you as well. Hot Road Media's Fairy Queen, Diane Hilbert. Grand Old folks, that's Betty Lange. Guha, thanks for joining us this evening. Helen Espinoza and Jason Evans, thanks for joining us tonight. Jill Nimchinsky, Judy Wilson, Murtaza Arif, thank you very much as well. And thank you, everybody, for the wonderful questions. You guys had some great ones tonight. There's Nick Boulay and Robert Hanna, Rosella C. Rowe. Sandra Griffin, thanks for joining us tonight. There is Sharon Lane and Stacy Comiskey. Tammy Heitzman, The Haglin, Tim Schoen. I can't do the Haunted Road Roast thing because I don't have the bag. And the participants tab just jumbled up. So there's The Haglin, Victoria Monday, and everything kind of went weird. So
I don't know why.
I don't know. So there's Adam Tillery coming out of the woodwork with his lurking eyes. Andrew Cox and his trucking gnomes, thank you as well. So
I hope he's feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys want to shout out? Hurry up and get it down there in the chat because I'm about to close it out here. I'm scrolling through to see if there's any others that the participants tab missed. And I'm not seeing anybody else here. So I think, did I say Chipper Terry? I think I said Chipper Terry.
Yes, you did.
All right. Mr. CO2, thanks for your questions this evening. And I'll scroll all the way down. All right. So Nisaba, yeah. Thanks for joining us tonight. And I think that's it. All right, everybody. If we missed you, apologize. We try to get everybody, but there's lag.
Tillery was in there lurking.
I saw that. I did get Adam Tillery.
Okay.
So, all right. Vanessa Hogel's in the chat. So, you know. All right, everybody. So we will see everybody back here out there in 2 weeks.
Later.
June 9th. We'll see you then. Have a good one. Till next time.
Bye.